Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Grim Oak podcast. This is the second episode. I'm super excited about this new podcast that we're running because it allows me to not only touch base with all of you and showcase some very cool stuff that Grim Oak is doing, but it also allows you guys to ask questions and we can put, I get put on record kind of, which is kind of fun. Today is episode 2. Last week was Tad Williams and Donato. And this week, for episode 2, I am in conversation with artist Alan Morris, who I'm sure many of you know his work already because he's done a lot of work for Grim Oak already. He's working on the Belgariad series, and he's been working on the Thomas Covenant series. So thank you, Alan, for taking time out of your busy day. I know I got you, already working on the last 3 novels of Belgariad. So
right.
Thank you for joining, and say hi to everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. One quick note: if you're going to be put on record, I don't want to be on record at all. If I miss say anything,
Totally fine.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about. We're talking about the power that preserves today, right?
Yep,
the newest cover for the Covenant series, the last of the first trilogy, right?
That's right. And before anybody asks, and they will. Before anybody asks, we're going to do the second Chronicles. It's going to happen.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. I
have not talked to you about that yet because we're still trying to finalize the contracts for the second Chronicles with Del Rey. But yeah, we're going to do it, and we're going to give it a little bit of time. We're not going to run into it because I really feel pretty strongly, and I think you do too, that we want to wrap up Belgariad the best way that we possibly can. So rather than fracture you and break your stride within Belgariad by alternating between the 2 series, I think the best thing to do is just kind of work through and do Belgariad and get it wrapped up and done. And then we can, then we can go to Second Chronicles. So
and the Belgariad's written sort of as one whole story anyway. So that kind of works. Whereas these can stand independently. They're all one chronicle, but the books stand more independent.
They do, because of Covenant coming in and out of the land, at least the first trilogy.
Right.
Let's see. So just some bookkeeping stuff here, just really, really quick. Earlier this week, I wrote a blog post that kind of updated people with the project statuses and stuff. Becky is still on vacation in the warehouse. She does return this weekend, so she'll be back in the warehouse next week shipping Prince of Thorns. And then after Prince of Thorns, she'll jump right into the Warded Man, and she'll just work through doing Warded Man. By that time, we'll receive A Darkness at Sethanon by Reimagine Feist, and she'll ship that out. And then probably right in the middle of her shipping out A Darkness at Sethanon, we'll get in our copies of Tail Chaser's Song. So Becky's going to be very, very busy. Expect a lot of books being shipped out over the next 3 months, and be watching the tracking, and be watching, your mail carrier walking up to your house to make sure you get your books. And then one other piece here, this is a podcast, and I do love questions. So if you have any questions for me, or especially for Alan, since we have Alan here for this episode, the second episode of the Grim Oak podcast, feel free to use the Q&A button down there and ask whatever questions you have. We're going to showcase a little bit of Alan's art from The Power That Preserves, 2 interiors and the cover. The discussion about the cover is going to be super fun. And I think what we'll do maybe is we'll jump into the 2 interiors first. I'm going to do things a little backwards here. And then we'll talk at length about the cover, because the cover has largely been the one thing that we've had to retouch lately. So anyways, make sure you ask your questions, and we're here for you guys. So anyway, so let's get this started. Let's talk just really briefly, and it doesn't have to be briefly, I guess, but let's talk about your background, kind of your history, who your favorite artists are, and what gets you up in the morning to do art, basically.
Okay. Yeah, we can start with my history first. I was born in rural. I live here again now, actually, in rural Cleveland, Mississippi. College mascot, home of the Fighting Okra, just to show you how rural it is. And I didn't know anything about art at all. Whenever I got to college or going through high school, the most I had any experience with any form of art was what we learned in history books through the Renaissance and Michelangelo and Da Vinci. And I remember I was really into fantasy. My uncle would give me these fantasy books. And there was this one series I read, I loved reading. It was The Legend of Drizzt. And I was in something like my senior year. I don't know why this had never occurred to me before, but I was like, well, I wonder what year this was published. And I looked at it, and right under, of course, right under the year it was published, it says, oh, illustrated by Todd Lockwood. And for some reason, it had never occurred to me that all these books I'd been reading, somebody had illustrated. And all my life, I had wanted to be some sort of biologist, scientist. And then in that exact moment, I mean, I can pinpoint exactly where I was. Everything changed. And I was like, who is this Todd Lockwood guy? I love all his work. And so I would go to his website and we started talking. And so he was really the first and still one of my biggest inspirations for what fantasy art could be, or what art was outside of historical. And then from there, I learned a lot about, I mean, you kind of dive straight in. I was this whole unknown world to me, of course. And so from there, moving to Elmore, mostly starting with like the D&D style stuff, because I was still younger, playing a lot of D&D when I had time. And then my second biggest inspiration from there, I mean, I'm inspired by everything, especially history, I think. But technique wise, I think a mix of Todd, and then my second inspiration being Donato Giancola, who you had on the first one. Did I answer all the questions? What did I miss?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's great. So you realized that you could make a living because somebody else was already making a living doing this.
I never thought anyone got paid for doing it. I don't know. I guess I just thought they were using art for fun. Because no one had ever, I never did know anybody growing up making art for a living. And I don't even know if it was so much a living, so much as, well, you can just do this. I didn't know that was an option.
Right. So it was after high school then when you kind of decided to go down this path.
Yes.
How did that happen? I mean, did you go to a formal art school, or how did all that work?
My art school was very same school in town here, Delta State University, and my school pushed me. They were kind of throwing out a lot of the academic art approaches at the time. And I went there with this newfound passion for, I want to be an illustrator. I know exactly what I want to do now. And so they were throwing out pretty much everything, that the steps to get you to be an illustrator, and focusing more on like modern abstraction. And I was just like, it felt like every single day I would go to class, I was just like pounding at the walls, trying to figure out, well, I don't want to learn any of this. I want to learn how to paint people and illustrations and things like that. And so I would reach out to artists in my spare time. I would send emails, probably annoyingly, to people like Todd and Donato and anybody I could find within a 3 hours driving distance that was doing this job. But the weird thing is, whenever I got out of school, that ability to sort of abstract shapes is what got me started on my career, because I knew how to sort of naturally put compositions together and put shapes together abstractly. And I think that's what really ended up giving me my step up when I first got started.
Right. And then, so obviously one of your annoying, and I'm going to preface this, I'm going to interrupt really quick. If I vanish, you're going to have to go on your own, because there's a little tiny thunderstorm rolling through. I can see it. So, and my modem hates that. So if I disappear, everybody, it's because of that. Not because I'm fed up with Alan. Okay. So obviously one of your annoying emails bore fruit, because you moved from Mississippi to Washington State. That's how we met. You want to talk a little bit about how working with Todd Lockwood came to be, and kind of what you learned there? And
I spent some money doing this thing called Smart School from one of my higher paying jobs. Well, higher paying at the time. And his class was the only one I really wanted to take. And like the last day of class, he had mentioned that his assistant was leaving. It was an online class, and his assistant was leaving. I joked with him. I was like, oh, well, why don't I just fly up there and be your assistant? He said, you could do that. It was just an off haphazard thing. And I stayed up all night, like just wondering, like, did he mean that? And I had to call him the next day. I said, I don't want to bother you, but is your assistant really leaving? Do you need a new assistant? And he said, yeah, I was being serious. And within a month, I had sold pretty much everything I had accumulated at the time and moved up to Washington in my car to live on his property. And I learned from him, the way he would put it is that at a certain point in your career, you need to be shown where the handholds are. You need to be given sort of this constant feedback. And he taught me so much about, I guess, the finishing touches, really, the things that push illustration from, putting a story on paper, just placing things down where they're supposed to be and bringing it to a more dynamic cinematic appeal. And on the other side of that, teaching me about a workflow, a better workflow as far as process goes, talking to clients. I learned so much about him from the business side as well. And I just tried to soak it up like a sponge. So.
Right. Yeah. And that's where we met. And I obviously you were, part of your time you were helping him out with his website and stuff. And the other part of the time you were starting to get paid to do what you love to do, which is art, obviously. And that's when I met you. And so it was very fortuitous for me and for Grim Oak, honestly, and probably for all the people out there that are watching right now and all of our customers, because that meeting, I saw in you a great combination between Todd and Donato, where you kind of take their strengths and kind of make them your own, which creates this very unique look already. What was the first piece of art that you got paid to do? Was it like something in a convention, or what was it? Do you remember?
First piece of art I got paid to do. When I first got out of college, I sent my portfolio everywhere in the world, hoping to get, and even into living with, working with Todd, hoping to get some sort of job, and would rarely get emails back. And so I was working for a small publisher designing their covers, and it had nothing to do with painting. I was just doing the typography. But I would beg them to let me put my stuff in their pages so that it would get out into the world. But sorry, I'm getting off track. My first real paid work was from I don't remember the name of this company, but it was something like 10 different paintings, all for like $3,000. And I remember having to, in the deadline they needed, I had to wake up at 6 a.m. and start painting until like 8 o'clock at night to try and hit the deadlines for that.
Wow.
And it was joyous work. I learned so much doing that. But I guess and that was just for somebody's weird campaign they were setting up. I don't remember what that was. Another D&D work. But my first book cover work was probably for you, actually. My first novel work outside of gaming was for you. So that's I didn't realize that.
Huh. Cool. So it would have been, I'm trying to think, was that Pawn of Prophecy, or was that Lord Fowl's Bane?
Lord Fowl's Bane.
Cool.
Yeah. No, had we done something? No, we had tried to do something with Terry Brooks before.
Yeah.
And that fell through.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, yeah. So I'm proud to be that person to have hopefully paid you better than the other person
to get me out of the gaming world that I was seemingly trapped in, painting other people's characters. And yeah. Right.
All right, cool. Well, let's see here. Let's do that. Actually, what we're going to do here is I'm going to feel free to ask questions for Alan or me. We're here for you. So if you have any questions, make sure, for those newcomers who have just entered, make sure that you use the Q&A button. Yeah, and we'll get to some of these. Let me see here. Let me see what I want to showcase first here. I'm going to showcase, I think the Illearth stone is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull that. I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh, the interior or the cover?
The
For that book?
interior.
The interior. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna show the interior for that one because I like it a lot, and it doesn't give away a whole lot. And I want people to, kind of get a feel for what you're doing. In every podcast, I want people to understand what the artist is doing, but I don't want them to see every piece of art, because that like part of my fun is having people receive their books and then they start posting pictures everywhere on the internet of look at this, look at this, look at this. And the surprise and the awe helps drive me to be a better creative director. So
yeah, that's fun for me too, to see that.
Yeah, let's see. So but I'm working on this tiny computer, and so let me see here. I'm gonna cover up that right hand side over there. There we go. So I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Uh-oh, maybe not. It says you can't share your screen.
Oh, did you give it to me? And it took it from you, maybe?
Allow Zoom to share your screen. Oh yeah, I need to go into my system preferences on this thing and allow that to happen. That's kind of funny.
Okay.
So I'll be quick about this. This is easy.
Did I show you? I guess I did show you my portfolio when we first met. I was always looking for somebody to show it to back then.
Oh no, I can't do this. I need to quit Zoom in order to do it. And I don't
Do you want me to see if I can do it and
Yeah,
share? You can tell me which ones to share if I can do it.
yeah. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. So
No, I can't do it. It says a disabled participant sharing.
yeah, that's okay. I can give you the power.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, we hope.
Okay. The thing is that you might have to do it on your computer too, so we might be stuck.
Ooh.
A host. Allow. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on share screen, and I'm going to say, oh wait a minute, is it working now? Oh, it might be working now. There we go.
Oh, there you
Look at
are.
that. Okay, so it did work. Okay. Oh, it wants to record. Okay, well, I can't do that. I'm gonna have to add it in on the video. When I do the video, I'm gonna have to add it in. You can see my screen, right, Alan?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay,
Hopefully
great. So I'm gonna pull this one up first.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So, and I'm gonna go in here really quick and pull out that Q&A because somebody asked a question. And this question is kind of pertinent to what we're talking about here when it comes to your work. Kevin Moore says, love your work, Alan. Can I ask, with all of the fantasy imagery in the Thomas Covenant series, how do you decide and whittle down your choices for your artwork, and especially each cover art for each title?
Okay. When we're talking about the cover, I always feel like most of the time I go for I look at what the authors decided to call it, because that usually says so much about a book. Is that Stephen Donaldson, whose spirit I'm trying to capture a little bit in these paintings, has decided that the core of this book is the power that preserves. And so I'm asking myself, especially for the cover, what is the power that preserves in this book? And we'll get to that later. I can answer that question more later, but that's how I go about looking for imagery as I read the book. As far as the interiors, it's a little bit more scientific. I'm looking to space them off well enough to where I'm capturing, not putting them all in one specific spot.
Right, so spacing them out,
spaced out,
spacing them out throughout the book, so that when people are reading it, there's a little break in between each one, and they're all glommed up in one spot.
Yeah. And so just looking for those moments where serious things are happening, and that's why I try and read the entire. I mean, for every book I've done for Grim Oak, I've read the entire book, whereas some other clients I may not have time,
right?
Because I need to, for interiors, I just have to find what's important later on down the road, right?
Right.
So,
and for these, you did, I think you did 10, right? You did 10 interiors and then one full color for the signature page. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. So this is the Illearth stone. I have to be honest here. I am halfway through my Omega read for the book. So when I'm doing an Omega read, it's literally the last piece of the project that has to be done. And what I'm doing as an Omega reader is, we give the book to beta readers. They take first crack at looking at making sure that the migration from very, very old book files to the new InDesign works. And so the beta readers do that initial where they try to get as much of the migration errors as possible out of the book. And then during that time period, you are doing the art. And so by the time that the beta readers are done, you are getting close to the art being done. And then our book designer throws the beta reader corrections into the file. She throws your art into the file. And then I get that file. And so I'm reading that Omega read file, which I'm trying to catch anything that the beta readers missed, as well as look at your art versus what is in the story.
Right.
And make sure that that matches up at least to a point where nobody can write me an email and go, how dare you, not put the ring on Covenant's finger the right way. Like, that is how I do it. And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm only halfway through. This scene has not happened yet where I'm at. So,
right.
So when you go through, you pick something that is spaced out that makes sense, but also something that intrigues you about that particular area in the story where something has to go. What's your process? How do you start your process? Do you thumbnail like?
Oh yeah. I always start with the thumbnails. I go through and I sticky note. I like to, even if it takes, the time for shipping, I like to get the books to read, because having to bookmark pages, the digital process doesn't work for me as far as reading goes. I've got to have something to hold and look at, and just, it happens faster that way for some reason. And it's
right.
more of a kinetic response. But I sticky note through, and then I go through and space them out, and then I thumbnail. You don't see this part of the process. I do quick sketches for each individual one, and then try and thumbnail out whichever I find that works. That's the thing I'll submit to you. And then you either approve or deny them. Right. Which I don't think you've denied any, but
yeah.
The one thing I was going to say is that did people know how the technique came in for these? That these were originally in Lord Fowl, we had decided to do color.
Oh yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about that. The choice that we made very, very early on that I wish I could take back now.
Well, originally you told me, well, we're going to plan for these to be in color.
Yeah.
And then when inevitably the cost made it was necessary to make them desaturated, that kind of changed the style that had to be carried forth through the rest of the books.
That's right.
As well. So yeah, I always think that's interesting whenever I look back at these.
Yeah, because that's a part of the business. We're now I, compared to when we began working, I am much more like I'm much more invested with my time, making sure that what we charge for our books matches up with our need to stay in business. So, and that's a tough thing to do sometimes, and when we were doing Lord Fowl's Bane, I was like, oh, I want this book in color at $100 a copy. And when we got the estimate back, we were like, we can't do that. We're going to lose money on this. So at that time.
Right.
So we had to be quick on our feet with that one, which I appreciate you being quick on your feet, because that affected you the most, because you had to go back in and do some different things. So yeah, that's part of the business that we're in now. Like as an example, because and I'll just say this now, up front, because I was going to say it anyway. Like what I do is I put together like a P&L of the books. The way that our new model works now, we get a book completely done before we take money and accept pre-orders, right? So it's very easy now for us to finish a project, know all the bottom line costs on the project, the art, the book design, the cost of printing and binding, all that stuff, throw it into the P&L, and then it spits out a number at me, and Becky and I know what we need to be able to live and sustain Remote Press. So we match up the numbers and we figure out what we want to do. This will not come as a surprise to those of you watching right now, but the costs of paper have dramatically gone up. and paper shortages left and right in the world due to COVID, and
Right.
and a lot of these printers and binders, a lot of them have gone out of business during COVID. And so then the remaining printers and binders, all of a sudden, they're inundated with all this work from other people. And so now then they were like, well, crap, we need to start charging premium here to stay afloat as well. So when I did the P&L for The Power That Preserves, it was very obvious right when we got done, like we literally should charge like $135 per volume for this one, but it's going to be $125 because it's at $125. Becky and I are right at that threshold, right? Where, okay, we're right there. That's where we need to be, barely. So anyway, so that was the whole idea that went in, why everything got black and white from Lord Fowl's Bane forward. And that's why, because of paper costs, The Power That Preserves is going to have to be 125 as opposed to 100, because otherwise Grim Oak starts going the opposite way, and we don't want that to happen. So anyway, so obviously this image right here, when you were reading the book, it spoke to you.
Well, I don't know how much we can give away, but the ending of the book is really abstract. The final confrontation of this chronicle is really abstract. It happens pretty much totally in the minds of the two the antagonist and the protagonist, right?
Right. Yeah. In Fowl's crutch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one thing I remember, is that when you first walk in and see his throne room, it was the epitome of, the entire castle he had presented looked like that maybe at one time, almost like Revelstone, it had been carved out of stone, but it looked sort of like it had gone through this defiling. And I remember, that you could see the Illearth stone floating in front of this staircase that opened like a maw, almost like a dragon's maw leading up to the throne. And that was all, that when Donaldson decides to describe something, it must be important, because he rarely describes in full detail a lot of the time. In concise detail. And I just really enjoyed that. And I thought, better than trying to figure out some abstraction of Covenant to throw into the final mix, this would be a great, almost like a Jaws thing where you can see the environment, but you can't see the villain yet.
Right. Yeah. It's the ominousness of it that Covenant's walking into here. Right.
And to know that this is where Lord Fowl has been all along too. So seeing sort of his part of the entire series,
and
almost
what his presence would do to the natural world around him. I mean, the land is a character by itself, but where Fowl is, it's taken its toll down there. In the east of the land. But let me see here. I think I have another thing here. Yeah, I love this. I'm loving doing my Omega read, because I haven't read the series since I was probably 28 or 29. So that's about 17 or 16 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm loving it. Like I write every day, I write, I've been writing my 1,500 to 2,000 words every day. And it takes me to, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock or so in the afternoon. And then I'm spent. I can't write anymore because my words get just awful and stale and boring. And so I have to step away. And when I step away, I pick up the Omega read for The Power That Preserves. And I have the best time for my afternoons during the week. It's so great jumping into it and reading it again. This is a series, by the way, I haven't spoken about this very, very, very often, but everybody knows me as a Terry Brooks guy, right? And The Sword of Shanra was certainly the first book I read, first adult book that I read that left a huge impression on me. But the very next book that I read after that was Lord Fowl's Bane. And as a psoriasis and eczema sufferer, especially when I was younger, I really, despite the rape that Covenant does in the first book, I have a lot of Covenant inside me, the don't touch me, the the self-loathing almost. I had to grow to terms with that as I grew up. And so these books mean a lot to me, and getting the art right has always been important to me. Especially early on, Steve was very accommodating in sharing his thoughts on the art that we were producing, and kind of set the tone for all of this, which I admire Steve a great deal for, using his time that way. Let's talk about the signature page, because the signature page, I love this. I love this image so much.
Before you do that, I was going to mention this, that because you had told me that, or you had told me that, and then I think I think that's something we talked about personally, is that I grew up, a lot of people don't know this, I don't talk about it often, right? Is that I'm legally blind to a heavy extent, to where I was
wondering, I wasn't going to ask you about it because I didn't know how your comfort level, but now that you're bringing it up, I'm happy to say that you are our personal Heil Troy.
Yeah, that's why I think the Illearth War sort of became my favorite, because Heil Troy spoke so much to me too, and Covenant as well. At first, when you first said that, when we worked on Lord Fowl, that's where I came into it as, because growing up I'd wear all these corrective lenses and be looked at very differently. I had to bring like telescopes to class and these oversized books they had to print for me. And so, a little bit both sides here. So it's really interesting that we're both working on this book. I think doing our best on that.
Because we come at it from such a personally invested place. Yeah. Let's see here. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Go here.
Lava,
hot lava. All right, so this scene is, I hadn't read the books in so long, but I knew, I really knew what scene the signature page to be. So for the signature pages on these books, they're full color. That was the one thing that we could do that made sense. We could do full color for the signature page. So that allowed us to at least put some smattering of color into the book without it breaking the bank. And, the relationship between Covenant and Foamfollower is one of, I think, the most beautiful things about the original trilogy. Just these very different characters thrown into this awful situation, and they bolster, by the end of the trilogy, they're bolstering one another. And then I think it was you. I think you came to me and said, I'm really thinking about the full color and what might be cool. And I'm thinking this. And I was like, yes. You want to talk about this painting, how you go about doing a full color painting like this? I mean, it's such an important scene.
For me, let me pull it onto a different screen as well, because I can't see, I had an issue recently with my graphics card. I've got to pull it to my screen that's active.
Right.
The thing I wanted to capture about this originally was the heat and the carnage being done. So most of it's done I wanted to be very aware of the textures of the interaction of the lava or the flames catching on to Foamfollower's tunic that he wears. And I wish I had, at this point, looking at it again, I like this. I wish I had maybe put them a little deeper to show a little bit more struggle. But this is right at the point where they've just left the shore, and Covenant's like, oh, what are you doing? And looking back at the people that were following them, the creatures that were following them at that point, right as the clothes start to be burned off Foamfollower. How do I tackle a color image? I look at a lot of inspiration and try and gather, at what point can I remember feeling some sense of either desperation or like I had to get across some great obstacle of my own to see what I need to capture in there. I think that all art to a certain extent has to, to me, there has to be some sort of realistic anchor in there to carry forward. And so in this scene, I'm sort of imagining Foamfollower more than I'm imagining Covenant, right? Because he's giving this sacrifice for a greater good that he believes in, even if Covenant doesn't quite believe in it at that point. And it's a little bit of irony that in the beginning of the story, it had to be this because in the beginning of the story, Covenant carries somebody else to safety, right?
Right.
So
that's right. Yeah, he carries the little girl that's been bitten by the rattlesnake.
And then spends pretty much the rest of the book being carried by other people until he finally realizes,
because he's dying in the opening of the book. He's malnourished and his leprosy is doing what it does. And yeah, by the time he comes into the land, he's a shadow of the man he even used to be before with leprosy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so in that way, he does spend a lot of the book being carried, which is that I think that's almost like a metaphor for Covenant, that other people have to almost help him until he gets to a point where he can help himself.
And in the first book, we spent a lot of time in the illustrations with Covenant. He was the star of, they're asking how I pick interiors. In the first book, Covenant was the star of everything because he was undoubtedly the main character going through it. And in this book, I think probably the theme would be that I'm trying to focus more on the characters that are carrying him through and might, are arguably the real heroes here. So yeah.
Right. Okay, so now let's see if anybody's asked any questions here before I move forward.
Okay, yeah.
Let's see here. Q&A. I'll start with Yancey real quick, just because he asked first. What piece of artwork is behind me? That is a Donato painting that I bought from Donato 3 years ago. I think it's 3 years ago now. It was a cover that we did for Terry Brooks's Warrior novella that we never got the rights to print a physical copy of, which kills me. And I'm still trying to figure out a good way to use that piece of artwork on something Grim Oak. And if we ever do a special edition of Small and Magic by Terry Brooks, all of his short story collection, that's what we're going to use for the cover, because I feel like it deserves to be out there more.
That was never released. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was used as an ebook cover, and we used it as an ebook cover, and that's where it stopped. And then Terry really was hoping that Del Rey would buy the rights from Donato to put it on the cover for Small Magic, but Del Rey and the art director there wanted to take it a very different direction, which I approve. I like the direction that they did for that cover. So that never got used. And it's a meaningful painting for me. It's the lady in the Fairy Glen, in the United Kingdom. And I love Terry's Word and Void series. I think it's super underrated when in Shanra's shadow, and I find that unfortunate, but yeah, I love that painting. So there you go, Yancey. Yeah. Answered. So you answered Kevin Moore's question. I'll put answered live. Drew Foster, has Alan ever created on traditional mediums or just digital?
Yeah, I got started painting traditionally. Everything that I did up until I want to say 2015 was completely traditional, only working in oils, because my two heroes, I only worked in oils for their career until Todd switched over later on. Yeah. And the long and the short of it is that when I started getting clients, well, firstly, that was sort of the way things were going then, right? Digital art was really picking up, and I struggled against it for so long. But eventually, it just became when clients would get back to me and say, oh, this character, their arm's in the wrong place, or they need to have a different type of armor. It just became essential for me to switch over. But I still paint. The only way I could make it work was making the digital tools bend to my will and work the same way that I painted in oils.
Right.
So the process remains the same for me. It's just a lot faster to clean my brushes now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, much easier. You turn your computer off, you're done.
Yeah, but I still do some oil sometimes. I still have them over there. If people reach out for portraits or things, which nobody reach out to me for portraits, but still.
That's funny. Now you got this strange, I don't want to call it a sickness because that's not right, but you love painting hands just like Donato, don't you? You love it.
Yeah, what's strange there is I didn't love it when I come from it from a totally different place. I can woo it and say the same thing because I believe it, that Donato says, oh, well, hands are just as important as a portrait. They can show so much. And I believe in that.
Yeah.
After I heard it. But the reason I paint hands, or that I don't shy away from painting hands, is that in college I couldn't. And after college and when I was first learning to paint, and I challenged myself one summer among client work to paint something like 100 different hands, because I was so fed up with trying for that to be the stalling thing in what I painted as I was
Right.
learning.
Right.
And if you want to learn how to do something, do it 100 times. And so now I do it because I'm very particular about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm proud of it.
Well, I love it. Some of the work that you have on your website, by the way, if you guys haven't visited Alan's website, go do so, because you'll see some of those hands that I'm talking about. They're on his website. What's your website?
Alan Morris, ALLENMORRISART, AlanMorrisArt.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kevin Moore. Do you actually collaborate at all with Stephen R. Donaldson as to his visions, or do you interpret his visions from your personal reading? I kind of answered that a little bit at the outset. Steve really wanted to make sure that the covenant. The one thing that Steve told me very, very early on when we were talking about all this is he wanted to make sure that covenant was represented in the art, in these editions, the artwork, closer to what he saw. And he didn't like point fingers at Del Rey or anything, but I understood what he was meaning there. And that covenant on a lot of those book covers, he's way older than he actually is to start the book. I think Steve told me that Lord Falsbane, that first trilogy starts, Covenant's like 35 or 36.
Mm-hmm.
And don't quote me on that because I haven't read Lord Falsbane in a couple of years now, but yeah, so we wanted to make sure that Covenant had that right age, and that actually kind of goes into what we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. And I'm going to talk about collaborating not only with you but with the readers, because readers are so astute, and this is such a beloved series that you and I both have agreed at different times to reach out to the Thomas Covenant community on Facebook to get their impressions. And it always results in a better piece of art because we capture something that we missed. So in that way, we actually collaborate a little bit more, I'd say, with the readers than we do with Steve.
Yeah, I'd say that. I had to, for this cover, I had to reach out to even the Reddit group, because I think I had sent a question to you, because you're such a big fan too. And you told me to go ask the fans. And
yeah,
so
because I knew that for me to be able to answer your question about it, I was going to have to go in and read it. And my life is structured in a way that I can't just drop what I'm doing and go do something. So, so that's what you did with this cover. And we're going to talk a lot about that.
Okay.
We're going to talk a lot about the cover when we show it, because I'm super excited about showing this cover off. Let's get to another question here. Allison says, thank you for the webinar today. This has been wonderful and enlightening. That's great. That's why we do it, Allison. We love it. And thank you for joining us. We couldn't do it without you. Jim Letty asks, when I first read a book, the artwork of the edition I read first somewhat becomes fixed in my mind as the accurate interpretation of the story. And he says, I can say that I love your, meaning Alan, I can say I love your renditions much better than Daryl K. Sweet, S.C. Wyeth, and Janice Tate. And now they are supplanting my earlier visualizations. That's really high praise right there.
Well, that's great.
My question is, how do you have to consciously reimagine the story to not be overly influenced by those early illustrators? Did you take a look at the previous artwork that was on the books? Like when you realized you're going to be doing this trilogy, did you go out there on the internet and kind of see what Daryl's K-Sweet had done and the others?
Yeah, I am beyond familiar with all of all of the other covers. I think the thing that helped me most here is that all of the different artists had a totally drastically different take
Right.
to one another. And so I felt very comfortable to go and run with it. Whereas opposed to where I think if you were to ask me to do Lord of the Rings characters, I'd think of Donato, and I may not be able to do it, but
Right.
but yeah, I think that gave me a little bit of freedom to it. But also I learned a long time ago to just that yeah, pull from your inspirations, but then at a certain point you have to set all that aside. I'm sure you're the same way as a writer. I'm sure you have to sort of consciously uh take the books you read as inspiration and set them aside sometimes, even if you pull from them a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes when I need to evoke something when I'm writing, like the book I'm writing right now, it's split into 3 parts. And the opening paragraph of all 3 parts is written in a very different way than the rest of the story. And that was purposefully done. And I even had, one of my first beta readers for it. Actually, my editor, she's already read it, or at least the opening third. And she said, wow, that opening paragraph was very Tolkien-esque, like just the cadence and almost like, I don't want to say, it's like a thicker language almost than, a really commercial book. It was, I hearkened back to more of a literary type of writing. And I wanted that for those 3 paragraphs. So yeah, sometimes I pull from inspirations and I try to make it my own, of course, but that's an important piece to just creativity, letting art or writing that you've read or been moved by flow through you, to sound like Yoda, and just be and welcome that flow through and accept what it does for you as an artist. Let's see, Timothy Banks. We answered the Stephen Donaldson involvement part, but Timothy also asks, did you use any background material like the Atlas of the Land by Karen Fonstad to see what the author was describing? Or did you just rely on the text fully?
The books that I have a glossary in the back. Do yours not?
Oh, they do. But the Atlas of the Land is a compendium book, kind of, that's almost like the World of Shannara. It's like a guide to the book. So if you don't know what that is, then you
Well,
didn't
I
use
wish, because I have bookmarked on my on Google. I have the what is it, the white, what is it? It's something like the white gold wiki or something like
Oh,
that.
okay, good.
To go and look things up whenever I don't remember them. So
Yeah, there's a couple good resources out there, for sure. And I just, there we go. Am I back? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, so yeah, my internet connection is unstable. Yeah, it sure tells me that. I know that already. Yeah, it's weird. We got thunderstorms rolling through. We've had thunderstorms kind of rolling through, heavy hail the last 3 days. So it's kind of been fun. And I love the wild weather. I know you don't. You're in the South. You get nailed with wild weather all the time.
Yeah.
We rarely get it here.
It is safe to protect my hard drives.
Yeah, right.
From maybe tornadoes sometimes now,
Let's see, Brad Sands, who's a longtime customer and Grim Oak fan. Brad asks, are you considering color interiors for the second Chronicles? That is a very, very good question, Brad. I'm going to leave that actually up to the community. I'm going to do a poll at some point, and we'll see, if people want that done or not. Doing this book right here, I doubt that paper costs are going to go down anytime soon. And by anytime soon, I mean next couple of years, maybe. That's how much of a glut there is here, how much of a need there is. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, spending $150 for a full color book as opposed to $125, I would imagine most people would want the full color book for $25 more. But in that I always defer to the readers, to the buyers. You guys are the ones that make this possible, and I want you to be as happy as possible. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. So I'm sure Alan would love to paint full color interiors and get paid a little more.
Yeah, go back to the Lord Fowl paycheck instead of which you're still paying me very well. I mean, we didn't actually drop down that much, so I'm grateful. But no, and those were fun too, because I learned everything I know about color from Donato, and I love subtlety, and it's so hard to capture subtlety when you have to work in black and white and mass media print too.
That's right.
But
yeah. So, I'll leave that, you guys can, drop in the chat right now if you want what you would like to see done. I'd just be curious to get your pulse since you're here in the podcast already. Yeah, that could be fun. And why don't you let us know in the chat what you think about full color at 150?
We could do a poll. Do they make polls still on Facebook?
It's one of those things, because full color for an extra $25 makes sense, but then it's not going to match the first trilogy. So it's like, there's the OCD-ness of it too, in a certain way. God, why are you vacuuming down here? Roger Smith, I missed the first 2 books in the series, which are sold out. Do you ever reprint? Roger, we might do that. I don't know. We'll see. The books would not be signed, more than likely, but we could at least produce hardcover editions, of the book. But that's something I need to talk to Becky about. We've considered it. We've already talked about this with Lord Fowl's Bane and Magician by Raymond E. Feist. And so, we hear you guys. We know that you want, more of this, the books that you need to complete a full set kind of thing. So, we will talk more about that in the future.
Do you sell out of those? Those are totally sold out.
Lord Fowl's Bane sold out quickly, which was our intent. We wanted to make sure that if we did all 10 volumes in the series, that we wouldn't lose people along the way and then be stuck with a bunch of books at the end. So we limited it to 500. It sold out really quickly. And Illearth War just sold out last week, I think.
Oh, that's great.
9 remaining copies. But when I announced this chat with you, they sold that day. So
I would be interested. I want to know which, when we release the cover, I want to know which. We were talking about inspirations earlier, and I think I was probably a little bit more hesitant to give my own voice to the first book, and that's hesitancy has slowly dwindled. And I think this is probably the most true Alan painting so far for the cover. So I want to know what other people think. I want to know which one's their favorite.
Yeah. Good question. I like that. We could actually do a poll here if we really wanted to. We could show them all. Everybody in the chat right now is going color. And then Yancey's like, my OCD is kicking in. Same format for second trilogy, but perhaps end papers could be added for, with new color. So yeah, we see that, Yancey, this is the thing. It's going to be tough. I'm going to let maybe the majority have their speak, and then Becky and I will get together with Alan and figure out which direction we want to go.
If people are really, really interested, I do those portfolios. I could always paint them up front in color and sell the color version on portfolios, but that seems a lot less streamlined than just having color.
Yeah, and by the way, you can buy prints and stuff right on your website. So
I've still got something like 3 or 4 portfolios left for at least Illearth War.
Yeah, I think when we I think when we show the new cover here, which nobody has seen, you've seen it, but you haven't seen it. I think you might get quite a few people wanting that as a print, because it is kind of, like you said, it's probably the most Alan of all the pieces, and it's perfect for the wall. It is a perfect image to wow people with when they come over to your home. So
yeah, and I'll have it updated on my website after this too.
Yeah, good. Kevin Moore, do you have any cast-offs that don't make the books? And would you ever consider a booklet publication of unused artwork, a director's edition art book, if you will?
We originally talked about potentially, because we had talked about this with the Bulgarian, if eventually, because all the steps go into it, from thumbnails to, I've even got pictures of models that I used for the individual characters. we've done so many variations on some of the things that there's, versions people haven't seen, and sketches and so on and so on. When we were talking about the Bulgariad, we talked about if we end up doing the whole thing, maybe it's something we could have an art book for or something like that. Because I don't know if a guide to the Bulgariad's ever been done, much like the Atlas of the Land.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
that's interesting. I have thought about that, and if Covenant goes to, if we end up doing a ton of, I mean, there's already enough. There's 30 interiors that we've done so far and 3 covers. I mean, by the time we finish another series, that's arguably enough for a small collector's book.
That's 60 already. And then if you do all of them,
then sketches and commentary and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. After you'll have 10 covers, 100 interiors. Although we probably wouldn't do that's the other question too. The only other problem with doing color, black and white and color, is that, we can't do 10 full colors in a book is really expensive.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm gonna have to ask the community what they want to see done when it comes to these, because having 10 black and white, to having 10 black and whites for $125 or $135, as opposed to 5 full color interiors at $150.
All right.
We'd have to move it up to $175 to do the 10 for it to be cost effective. And then you start pricing yourself out away from some people. So, that's the business side of this, the tug of war that happens.
If on the back end of this, people were really interested, there are some interiors very specifically I would love to do color for. Yeah. And then also there's some I never got to. I did a cover interior that people aren't going to see today of a Banor of the Blood Guard. That's right. Because I felt like by the time we were at the end here, it's like, well, I've got to put Banor in there. He, to me, is just as significant. I mean, he, in the first book, forces Covenant to call the Fire Lions, right? And is just such a significant character to me throughout all 3 books. So I had to draw him, and I would love to find other moments like that. I'd love to do a portrait of Quan and more portraits of Lena or Elena. And yeah.
Yeah, cool. Anyway. All right. So there you go. There it was. Kevin's answered. Brad, if you do the Gap or Mordant's Need, might you publish those along with the Covenant, or only after Covenant is all done? Good question, Brad. Boy, I'm really torn on that. When it comes to the Gap and Mordant's Need, I love both those series so much. And, I'll have to talk to Alan about it, and I'll have to talk to Becky about it and figure out how we best want to handle that, because it's one of those things where I want to do them, but I also don't want to slow down Covenant. And, when we get the Bulgariad done, that's when I'm going to ask Alan, which direction do you want to go? What kind of art do you want to do? Are there any other series that you'd like to tackle first? It's not unlike writing, where some authors, they can't spend a lot of time in one world. They have to go branch out and go do something new and fresh to recharge their batteries for what they were working on. So those are considerations that, we'll be talking to Alan about and figure out what the best way. We will do those books eventually if I have my way. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to be in between series or not. The Gap is 5 books. Mordant's Need is 2. If we got Mordant's Need, and if I can, and some of you Donaldson experts out there, you might know what the word count is on both those books and what it adds up to. But if I had the word count for those books, I could probably see if it'll fit in one book or not. If it does, then obviously doing Mordant's Need in between one of the Covenant series would not be that difficult to do, because it wouldn't take a lot of time. So again, considerations. Brad, I'm not getting any younger. So saith we all.
That is something that with this art style we implemented sort of out of necessity, of a little bit more detailed than I might have gone for if it weren't in color at first. Yeah. Is that the Covenant books definitely take longer, right? Just doing the interiors.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Versus the drawings in the Bulgariad, which I love.
There's Brad right there. No to the omnibus. Too hard to hold and read. There you go. You're not lying.
Yeah.
There's binding, that has to be involved with that. Like our edition, I've said this before, our edition of Red Queen's War omnibus by Mark Lawrence we overprint by 10%. So that book had 1,000 copies printed. So we had 1,100 printed to account for damages and things of that sort. Well, we've already gone through the extras, I think, and we're actually dipping into the regular count now, because the binding on the book, it's just such a large book that we've had binding defects. So, that's a consideration to make, and obviously holding to read is one thing too. I'm just proud, Brad, that you read your collector editions. That makes me unbelievably pleased. A lot of people just throw them on the shelf. Somebody else wants full color. That's cool. Just thought a second Chronicles print blows my mind. Yep, John. John Wilson, full color at $150 is no questionable reasonable. Yes, it is. I think it is. And we've seen that. We've moved more towards full color because it matches up more with what I want on my own shelves. And we really dug into color with Stormfront by Jim Butcher and Tail Chaser's Song by Tad Williams. And so there's going to be projects that we still do black and white because it makes sense. But by and large, we're kind of moving towards full color anyway. But the OCD stuff that Yancey's talking about, that's a real factor. Kevin Moore, I spoke with Becky a few times about your rare editions of these books. Will you be auctioning the first trilogy of rare edition books anytime soon? Kevin, if we do it, it might be, we'll probably donate the books to World Builders, since now we're working with Patrick Rothfuss and his team at World Builders a lot due to our partnership. World Builders seems to be a good place to do it. So the other thing I'm considering right now is doing a series of auctions, possibly this summer, where we raise money using those rare editions for those folks who have been displaced in Ukraine. I think that might be a good use of the books too. A lot of epic fantasy and fantasy in general is about overcoming terrible odds, and those people, so many millions of people are displaced, that I think that might be a good place to do it too. So, but we'll talk more about that. Nothing's in stone. So Mark asks, rare editions, where are the rare ones? Okay, so we don't talk a lot about this at Grim Oak, but we get rights from the publishers to produce the letter editions and limited editions. We actually got rights pretty much from the start, where the publisher gives us rights to produce rare editions, and they don't demand a royalty for that, which is great, as long as we use the books for charity purposes. So the rare editions are like one more level up. They literally cost us $500 each to produce. That's our cost. And what we do with those rare editions is we use them for charity purposes. We only produce 5 usually, or 6, because we always produce an extra 6th one, for damage purposes, defective purposes. But yeah, the 5 books that we produce, they're bound in genuine leather, and they're very similar to our lettered editions, but there's only 5 of them, and they're bound in genuine leather. So some poor moo out there, or goat, had to give up their life for that book. But they're beautiful, they're stunning, they're stamped. They're a really, really lovely edition. And in the past, like we sold, I think, a set of, we auctioned off a set, and I think that auction was for the Shannara trilogy, so Sword, Elfstones, and Wishsong. And we auctioned that set off with the proceeds. I think the proceeds went to the Fred Hutch Cancer Research. Obviously, those of you, most of you probably know that I've had cancer 2 times. Cancer is something that I completely hate from top to bottom. And so when we could support the Fred Hutch Research Center here in Seattle, I thought, auctioning off the Shannara trilogy was a good way to do that. And they went for, I want to say it was like $7,800. So I loved that part of it. It's a piece that's important to me, obviously, just my personal life. That's one of the reasons why I think Pat and I, Rothfuss and I get along so good, is that we're always trying to make the world a better place in some way. And through you guys, we're allowed to do that. So, but yeah, so we got 5 copies of almost every single book we've ever produced. We have 5. and of the rare copies. So that's how we use them. So yeah, Brad says, so are the rare editions are the greatest of all time edition. That's right. They're the greatest of all time edition. I like that.
The goat, get it because the goat wrapped in leather.
Yeah, right. Oh, and Brad asks another question. Can we assume Name of the Wind will come from Grim Oak or the imprint? Brad, I think it's safe to assume at some point we will break down that wall, and that will happen. You know, it's Pat and I have talked about it, and we've talked about it to DAW Books, and everybody seems fairly amendable to it, but we have not signed a contract yet for it. So, but you know, fingers crossed that'll happen. I know a lot of you want that to happen, and in that situation, we would use a lot of the French artwork that Mark Simonetti put together for the French edition of Name of the Wind, and then probably have Mark do a couple more pieces. That's a book that would have probably 12 to 15 full colors in there because of the amount of work that Mark has already done. And we know that you guys will spend, you know, $200, $250 for, you know, a multi full color book for that book, because it's such an important book. So yeah, so I would say it's safe that at some point that'll happen. We have a lot on our plate right now, though. I mean, next month we're launching Digger. The Kickstarter for Digger on May 10th. So be looking for that first. No. So there's a question about the rares. There you go, Mark. John Wilson, if you're speaking of other series, what about Landover series? Yeah, we've talked to Terry about doing Landover, but we are in the middle of doing the Heritage of Shanrock 4-book set. So actually, we should be receiving copies for Scions of Shanrock maybe in the next 3 weeks or month. Next week, Antiquity Grey special editions are finally arriving, which Alan actually did the artwork for The Undone Life of Jack Dretz. So yeah, Alan and I've actually worked together a lot when you think about it.
Did the interiors we did for Antiquity ever go to mass market, or?
You mean like a wide release?
I think was that not the plan for them, or am I thinking of something else?
I think they're black and white inside the trade cover, if I remember.
The trade cover, that's it.
And then they're full color in the signed and numbered edition that should be coming in next week, late next week, if all goes right with the freight company.
Okay.
Yeah, so the painting that you did for Antiquity Grey will be inside that book. And this is what about Landover? Okay, answered that. So yeah, I'd love to do Landover. And the other thing about Landover too, we're kind of in this holding pattern with Hollywood when it comes to Landover. We keep hearing that there might be a possibility that Landover will get an adaptation of some kind. And of course, if that happens, Del Rey might want to hold on to their rights rather than give them to me, because they'll want to produce their own hardcovers to take advantage, which I'm totally fine with, by the way. That's pretty cool. Somebody asked pre-order date. Yeah, David, look at you. I was wondering when somebody was going to ask that question. So let me see here real quick. What did I pick for the date? So the date, the pre-order date, and I'll be sending out an email to all you guys that own the Illearth War, but the pre-order date will go live at 11 o'clock in the morning Pacific time on April 22nd. So 2 weeks from today, you'll be able to order your Power That Preserves finally. And that's pretty cool, I think. So. And as I said, the book, other than my Omega read, which will be done here in a little bit, we already have the book quoted and estimated. I'm trying to think of files. I think the initial files have already gone to the printer. So the initial files, except for the wraparound cover, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So there you go. There you go. Been waiting for that one. So Kevin Moore, am I right in saying that your lead time from ordering, going live to shipping is a lot less these days? It used to be a 12-month wait, but has that reduced significantly now? Yeah, Kevin. So initially when I launched Grim Oak Press and Jeff joined me and we started doing all of this insanity, we could literally turn in files and have books shipped to our warehouse within 3 months, or even 2 months sometimes, depending upon how busy the printer and bindery was. Then COVID happened, and then paper shortages happened, and then all that kind of went sideways. And so we had projects where we took money from people, and then all this delay and COVID hit, and 15 months, like it's ridiculous how long it took these guys to get their stuff done. And then a lot of the date problems too were problems at the bindery or the printer, like for Antiquity Gray, the printer producing a full color interior illustration by Caitlin Zupanik, and like the wheels on their printing press or whatever created folds in the full color tips that were supposed to go in. Well, we can't do that. The full color tips, you guys are paying top dollar. You can't do that. So Becky and I decided to change our model where we have enough money in the bank where we can safely get several books kind of going and pay the authors, on time, and get books, put the money down at the printer and the bindery that we can shorten the time. So if you notice, last year, I think we announced maybe one book, maybe two books, because last year was a year that we were using to get all these things going. So now it's very simple to get a book completely done from top to finish, and then reveal it and show it off and take pre-order. And so that lessens significantly the amount of time where you guys feel like you've had your money stolen because it's been a year. Well, that's not the case anymore. We're shipping pretty quick. So A Tail Chaser Song was the last book that we took pre-order that way. And going forward, all of the books are going to be like this now, where like The Power of the Preserves, other than my Omega read, it's done. And, we'll be shipping it at the end of summer or middle of summer. So that's much better. And then David Kingsley asks, any update on the next Peter V. Brett? No, actually, Alan Williams has said that he's going to start work, I think, in May. So I think next month, Alan Williams will jump into doing the Desert Spear. And so, yeah, but again, we're going to get that one completely done from top to finish before we do a pre-order on it. So, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at this cover. If I can find, I need to find the right cover here. Open up the right file. Because I'm really gonna.
Okay.
I'm gonna screw it here.
Oh, you're gonna mess with it?
No. I'm gonna show it.
Okay.
But I'm gonna screw around with some of the people that are watching right now, because I've been like that my entire life.
Oh, you're showing the original.
I tease people all the time with stuff. So anyway, in this, the way that Alan and I work together, Alan always sends me thumbnails for a proposed cover. Usually it has a couple different scenes to these thumbnails. And I go, you know what, I really like that one. Let's go with that one. And then he starts working on that particular thumbnail, bringing it to life. And, I love the direction that he was going on this first painting that he did for, where is it? Uh-oh, I hope that didn't get moved out. See, now I'm wondering, which one is that? Okay, there it is. That's that one. So we want to hide that one. And I'm going to show the old one. If I can find it. Yeah. Rochelle this morning moved it. That's what I thought. Okay,
okay.
I moved it.
I've got them all up here if you want to. I can open up with the old one.
Yeah, I'll do it here.
Oh, you've got it. Okay.
Got it. Yeah, this is fun. Okay. All right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here we go. So here's the original painting that Alan turned into me. And I loved it. And I thought, wow, this is the best thing he's done, easily. That's how strongly I love this painting so much. Just the details that go into it and the energy that's in it. And obviously this is Revelstone, and this is, Morm here trying to, bolster his defenses against the Ravers army and the Illearth stone and all that. And I loved, and Morham or Morm, however you say it, is one of those characters. He's a fan favorite character for sure. And I saw this painting and I went, God, that's great, Alan. Good job. And then I was like, I better share this with the community to kind of get some feedback. So we did that, and we got some feedback really early on about this. And I'm wondering if anybody's saying anything here about it. So Yancey says, wow. And then Kevin Moore says, there's just so much going on in there. It's amazing. Yeah, and it is amazing. There is a lot going on. And, you get in here and, you see scratches on these guys from, the Erviles or the Demon Dim or whoever is out there in the plains outside of Revelstone. But everything still comes down to the star of the painting, which is, obviously the High Lord during this time. So anyway, so Mark H right here says it right here, right out of the gate. That's a good segue, Mark, because Mark says, I've seen this picture. I enjoy it, but I don't like thinking about Morm as old, smiley face. So anyway, so I began my Omega read. Right. And we can talk more about this and how you came to deciding this image and all of that. I love that you have the krill here, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was hoping you mentioned that. Yeah. As it starts to light up.
Yeah. So, and he has, his blue Lord fire, and he's wearing blue. And this was Quan originally, right?
Right. Yeah. Not sure how I decided he was still going to be in his 30s when we through.
Well, okay. So
3 books.
Let me ask you a quick question about models and stuff. So when you do a model, when you bring a model in and you have some photos taken or whatever for, try to capture whatever you're wanting to paint. Do you does the appearance of the model truly affect the ultimate outcome, or is it just like a stick figure that's in place for you and then you come in with the rest?
Usually I find somebody with the body type. The model for Quan was me. And then because I bring in about 2 or 3 models, including myself.
Okay.
And especially
sorry.
Oh. Especially for larger covers like this, because you never know who's going to be better suited to hit the mark.
Right.
Actually, I think that's my face or head, because I liked the light and the expression I was making versus a model's much more muscular than me model's movement.
Right.
And usually what I do is I then go and find somebody that I think I might have seen this person before. So for instance, like if I wanted him to look tough, I might go find some image of like Russell Crowe or something like that to sort of mold the two together.
Right.
Just to find those elements. So I don't know. Sometimes it's a forest for the trees thing. I was so caught up on, I want Morum to be old because I think because they mentioned him being in his 70s, and I had missed the part you had sent. And I don't know how I managed to just skip by the idea that it had been all these decades and Quan was still going to be younger.
Right.
So
hey, son. So anyway, so we got in here and then, we posted it online. I think I posted it, I know, in a newsletter, and then I think it got to the Thomas Covenant board, and then everybody was, wow, that is amazing. But they did mention like what Mark mentioned, which is, Morm's not old, technically, but I mean, he is, but he's not, because he's a Lord and he has earth power. So he lives longer than normal. So, in the power that preserves, we get a lot of point of view from Morm. We get a lot of Morm's point of view in that book. And he's described, he's looking at Quan in one passage, and Quan, Quan is said to be 70 years old. He's just this tough soldier. He's a war mark, like he's tough, right? But he's 70, and 70 has a very specific look to it. Even if you're really, really fit, you are definitely in your 70s when you're in your 70s. My father-in-law's in his 70s, right? And so I know what that looks like. And so, and so we didn't know that when we were going in here. We didn't know like initially, like I didn't do my do a good enough due diligence for you to have you not go down this path because you know, I'm so busy and everything. I can make excuses all day long, but when I started my Omega read though last week, I saw what people had said about him being too old, and so I was very kind of tuned into that while I was reading to see if I could really pull out of the literature that Steve had written about Morm's age and what he looks like, and Quan, and I came to the passage that I sent you a couple days ago, which is, you know, Quan is 70 years old. It says it very specifically. He is 70. And then in the next paragraph, it says, you know, Morm is 90 years old, but he looks 20 years younger than Quan. So he looks like a man that's in his 50s. Yeah. So this was what you had originally done here, which I loved anyway. But to have the best possible cover on this, because it's such an important series, not only for you know, for me, but for so many. You know, I asked you, I said, do you have time to go in here and maybe read this passage and do it? And you were like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. So here is the final, which I absolutely love. And almost all this is it's the same as it has been, right? Like all this is the same.
Yeah.
But you went in here and look at that.
Yeah, so we made the light bluer to match the Lord's flame.
That's right. So this light right here is bluer. Yeah, because the other one I felt like was pretty good, but somebody did say, well, he should have blue fire. And I'm like, yeah, but when blue fire is so hot that it actually turns white, then, you know, so yeah, let's put some more blue in there, which you did, and it looks great.
There's instances in the on the Lord's flame. There's instances I've shown it in the previous books, and this is not meant to, I mean, this is just like the start of what could be the Lord's flame. Like almost he's just ignited it. That's why it's booming outward there.
Right.
So, anyway,
drawing on his power. And he's wearing the blue, which the High Lord wears blue. Actually, I think maybe all the Lords wear blue now that I think about it. But you definitely de-aged him. So that's great. And that does look like a man that's in his 50s. Somebody said some Grecian formula in there. Yeah, that's what we got him. Brad said that. And then you also went into Quan too. And
yeah, Quan is definitely older now.
Yeah.
Which he lost some of his color.
He looks 70 now, which is great. And he does have his ebony sword, which is great. So even Kevin Moore, what a difference that makes. So this is a part of the process, right? The process that we go through at Grim Oak, which I just think is super fun that we get to play around the way we do. But
well, now you know what Moore looks like when he's older.
Yeah, right. So Mark H said, love it. So he was the one that said, I don't like Moore being that old. Well, now he loves it, right? The fights. Yeah.
Yeah. So his hairline dropped down, the wrinkles were changed out. I did go find, I think I told you a picture. I talked about mix matching characters. I went and found, I always think Kurt Russell has this almost eternal youth to him.
Yeah.
So I went to find what a 50-year-old Kurt Russell looked like.
Yeah. Right.
And used it as a bit of inspiration, but he still doesn't look like Kurt Russell, which is fine.
No, yeah, he doesn't. The only thing is we can't get in close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's the new cover. I hope you guys like that. And then I think Rochelle laid it out today. So this is the actual cover here.
Yeah, it looks good.
Which I think is pretty cool. If I can expand that out a little bit.
Yeah, not having the white hair helps the silhouette as well.
Can you still see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there's that. So yep, I love it. It's the best piece you've done so far for Grim Oak. You haven't got some Aliantha down there, huh?
Yeah, well, to me, that's what I was going to talk about, is that we talked about where I find the idea. Well, the power that preserves is halfway the power that Morum and the Krill are drawing on. But to me, the power that preserves is the land. And so that's the blooming out of the snow at the bottom is the real power that preserves for me.
And I'm gonna say something else too here about the cover. So this right here, the title will actually be a foil. We did like a pearl foil or a white foil before, but this one's going to be a blue, because I felt like the white pearl would kind of it would just be it would fall into the piece and you wouldn't be able to really see the title too much. So Becky and I made a decision to do this kind of royal blue foil up here to try to pull out the blues that's in Morum's robes. So yeah, there you guys go. And then of course, this is the song that Morum's using when he's trying to call covenant to the land the first time in this. So yeah, there we go. Any other questions out there? We're going over time here, so I want to make sure that everybody has their chance to say something. What's with the white rectangle in the back of the jacket? Brad, that is for a barcode that unfortunately isn't needed because these books sold out so fast. No bookstores even got any of these books now, or local bookstores or anything. So, but the first book had a barcode because I didn't know how it was going to sell. So now all the books have to have barcodes because I'm OCD like that.
Yeah. You're not missing much. There's
amazing, a work of art, literally. Yay, I'm happy you're happy. Yeah, anyway, I assume you're going to do a spell check on the cover flap text. Yeah, I have not done my read of that yet, so I will do that. Robin, if you see something already, let me know what it is so I can make sure to catch it. Anyway, cool. Now let's look here. Let's see if there are any. Yeah, I literally got that dust jacket this morning from my book designer, so I haven't had a chance to go over it yet. Let me see what people are asking, if there are any other questions. There aren't. Okay. Well, anything else you want to talk about? Thank you for joining me. This has been fun.
Well, I pulled up the process if you want me to go through that, but if we're running late, we don't have to.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to see if I can give you. I don't know if I can give you power here.
If you can't, that's all right.
I think I have to make you. I think I have to make you host.
Oh, that's strange.
There you go. So now you're host. Now
I have the power. Okay.
So now you can go down. There should be a share screen button in the middle bottom.
I'm in charge of Grim Oak now, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, please.
I will. This is going to go downhill fast. Okay. Can you see my screen?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. This is the old cover. So if I backtrack, let's go full screen here. Yeah, so I did the initial reading, and again, these are the initial thumbnails I sent you.
Right.
There's this one of Morum looking over the forces of Lord Fowl that have erected themselves outside Revelstone. And then we did a couple, so this is sort of a mix match. So a portrait of Morum juxtaposed with maybe a portrait of Covenant on the back.
Yeah, I had a hard, I liked number 2 a lot. I remember liking number 2 a lot.
Yeah, because that portrait just looks great as a cover, right?
Yes, it does.
and then maybe having like the snow and everything showing a ghost of Covenant, and then 3, which we ended up, there was an idea of 3 without any of the Erviles there.
Right.
Let me get to it.
That was number 9.
Yeah, right there. And then we had one with the Erviles, and you can see I planned all the guys running too, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then number 6 was a close up of Foamfollower carrying a downed Covenant.
Yeah.
Which if I kind of wanted to do that. I'll probably end up doing that. You'll see this composition come back somewhere. I don't know where it's going to be. It may not be this serious, but. And then here's Foamfollower and Covenant in the blasted lands of Lord Fowl. And then finally, going back to the what was the name of the healing flower?
Well, there's Hurtloam and Aliantha.
That's it. Sorry, Aliantha. Aliantha coming out of the snow as Covenant sort of wanders into the trees with a trail of blood behind him.
Right.
So that one was a push. I didn't know how emotional we wanted to get with the cover, but obviously we went with number 3B there. And then from there, that comes from I take pictures of models and go through and design everything out. The biggest change from the initial drawing here, and we had designed these guys actually from book one,
right.
Or at least some of them are Urviles, but the larger ones are the creatures that have no eyes and just the nostrils.
Yeah, the lore masters.
That's it.
Take their staves and pool their power to create the corrosive acid that's being attacked and launched at Revelstone.
And then from there, sorry, I'm going through full screens there. The biggest change that happened from drawing to finished paintings that I put it on a Dutch angle. You can see the angle shifts there from a straight line to give it a little bit more prescience.
Right.
And then we made the changes in the last couple of days to where we have an older, I guess I've got a big version here to where we have an older Quan he's got some scars on his head. I added in too, scars on his armor. There's a lot of moments happening in here. People probably don't notice this guy cutting down one of the Urviles.
Right.
This one with, there's all sorts of small details that I love. There's some Urviles making their way through the ranks back here.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. And then of course everyone's got to have an arrow in the eye if there's a war scene. So
I love it. That is so great.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, you've got some.
Cool. My 2-year-old is wanting my time, so
okay,
we better wrap this up. Mark said, I'm going to let what Mark said here. Well, 2 things. Kevin says, thanks for a great podcast, really informative, and the 90 minutes flew by. Boy, it sure did, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then Mark H said, black and white is impressive, but pales next to the color version. So impressive, Alan. I think that's a good way to end it, because you did an incredible job on this. Thank you so much for your talent and your time and your artwork. Like, I think you have a very, very good career ahead, and it's going to be long.
It sounds like you and I have
you're going to take a lot of my money. I know that. So
it sounds like you and I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we do. Well, Bulgaria, what Alan and I are attempting to do is going to be kind of fun, because Alan, right now you're in the midst of thumbnailing, right? The last 3 books of Bulgaria. You're going to work on all 3 at the same time. We're going to send all 3 books to the printer at the same time. They will ship to us all at the same time, and we're going to fulfill those orders at the same time. So
that's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Again, make sure to visit Alan's website. There's great stuff there. He's going to update that. He's going to update his website with that new version of the cover for The Power That Preserves. I happen to think that is going to look really great on people's walls if they have any interest, of course. And thank you for joining us in episode 2 of the Grim Oak podcast. This has been great. And
happy to be here. Anytime.
Cool.
If you need a guest to just be around. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I spend so much time working on this stuff, I rarely get to talk about it, right? But
yeah. Okay, Mark H, to be clear, when can I buy this book, assuming they're not all spoken for already? Well, Mark, the people that own Illearth War will get first crack at it. And then if we have copies left over, then you'll be able to buy one. So that's kind of how that works. If you own Illearth already, then we'll match your number. So that's how that works. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, Alan. And till next time.
All right.
Love you guys. Bye.